Ark Beyond Ascension, Part 19. Hello everyone and welcome back to our journey. So today we are headed out over to Carno Island looking to take on the NorthEast cave. And I've brought with me a couple of friends here. I figured we would just take the raft and bring over our mutated wolves. Now these wolves do not have the maximum stats yet. They actually are just the colors. This here is actually Sunny, so he's actually not even imprinted. He was the original one we got the colors on. And the same can be said for one of those green guys over there. One of them does have an imprint, but the other one just got the colors first. But the moment we arrived here on the island, I immediately got attacked by an alpha raptor. That is the story here of Carno Island. I think there has been about 15 alphas between raptors, carnos, and rexes on this island. It has been absolutely bonkers. And I don't know why I didn't whistle these guys too aggressive, because they could totally help me out. But the main reason I brought the pack is just due to the pack bonus here. I figured even if I don't use them necessarily because they're here, I actually can use the howl, which will allow me to go through and do a whole bunch of damage. So I made my way to the beginning of the cave here, and started working my way through the water. I quickly realized, though, that the wolves would not be able to follow me. I was going to have to manually go back to grab each one, and that was probably going to have to be the case as well throughout certain parts of the cave, where there will be some jumps involved, as whenever they try to follow you, their AI is actually not all that great, even though it says it's smart. If they see a gap, they're probably just going to fall down the hole. So we will have to do a little bit of legwork here in order to get them all to the bottom, but first and foremost, we are going to have to deal with these pesky guys here. And so I basically wanted to go through and try and lure them to me, as I know on the right-hand side, more often than not, there tends to be a megalania hanging from the ceiling here. I did not see one on this circumstance. However, it is quite often that there is one right here when you enter the cave, and I did not want to go through and risk getting mega rabies the moment when I started this cave. And then I went a little bit too far and I got ganged up on by the scorpions here, and literally the very first hit, I got mega rabies. Now, fortunately, I did have some food with me, and I still was actually quite hungry. I was about halfway down my meter, which meant that each piece of meat that I ate was actually going to go through and heal me, which meant I could survive the mega rabies attack. Now, I only have 450 health, so technically if I was not eating or regaining my health, I would go through and die. However, I was okay, and I went through and I made my way back, trying to go through and grab each of my wolves to bring them back over. Now, the one part I did not realize, though, is that mega rabies also drains your stam, or basically makes it to where it doesn't recover the way that it should. So it was quite close here. As you can tell, I was actually getting really low on stam, not realizing that as I was swimming, and that could have potentially been bad. But once all the wolves were across, we started making our way down and making the ascent, or the descent, to go through and get ourselves an artifact. Now, there's a whole bunch of bats here, and so typically the majority of people, I believe, would go through and just shoot them, and that's exactly what it is that I tried to do. But first, before I looked all the way across the chasm here, I figured I would go through and deal with the scorpion that was on this side. That way he didn't accidentally hit me and knock me off the cliff, because that would be like an absolute worst case scenario. I then got pretty lucky by landing the first shot that I flew all the way across the map here, and then I forgot that I had not reloaded my shotgun prior to this actual visit, so that was unfortunate. But I went through and I figured I could go through and attack these guys. Now, I did not turn my team here on aggressive or even on neutral, as I knew that even just a slight slip and they would fall all the way down to the bottom, and there would essentially be no way of me saving them, because they would get immediately killed down there if they were all by their own and did not have the mate bonus. So I figured we would play it a little bit safe here and basically just have them sit still and have us get the pack bonus here, and then hopefully, we could use the howl in a little bit here. But I did not feel like it was needed at this time, and the onyc all by themselves were pretty straightforward. I was just praying that I did not receive mega rabies yet again, because that is like the worst case scenario, is getting mega rabies either from the onyc or the megalania. The scorpions and the spiders do not pose too much of a problem. But the biggest threat in this cave was actually me, because the one thing that I absolutely do not like about this cave is the jumps. I think jumping puzzles tend to be a lot of the reason a lot of players tend to die. And the moment I was thankful that I was able to go through and make that jump with success and not have any worries, I hopped off my wolf and he immediately sprinted back to the others because he is still on follow to Sunny, which was a big mistake on my part, and I was very fortunate that he did not fall down that hole into that chasm. So fortunately the AI worked out there in my favor, but that is not always the case. Now, like I mentioned, I was going to have to do some legwork, so essentially every single gap that I got, I would go through and just have each wolf jump over one at a time, make sure the area was clear on the other side to leave them on passive on the other side, and to make sure that when I hopped off, I did not get eaten alive. And if there was anything nasty over there trying to kill me, I would go through and kill it first before proceeding to bring everybody else over, as I didn't really feel like anywhere along this drop actually was potentially dangerous, in any capacity when it came to creatures, the fall was definitely going to be the scariest thing. Once we got to the bottom, that tends to be where the majority of the creatures for this cave are located. I then spotted some more bats as I was making my way down and figured I would go through and do the exact same thing I did prior, and I would go through and try and snipe them with the crossbow. Now I could use the shotgun to potentially land a pellet, but shotgun ammo was significantly more expensive than crossbow ammo, and I literally had like 700 spare arrows back at the base, so I figured worst case if I missed a couple it would be okay, and the point was not actually to kill them, it was simply to just go through and draw their aggro, so I could avoid potentially getting into a fight while I'm near a gap, and avoid the risk of falling down into a hole. So I went through and I lured them up against the wall just to make sure they didn't push me back, because the bats can definitely knock you back some, whether you're on a player or on a mount. When there's too many of them, they can certainly push you, so you definitely have to go through and be careful with that. And once we dealt with them, I found myself a dung beetle, and they were just hanging out and chilling. And then as we were working our way down, I actually came to a small little area where I had to go through and navigate essentially along the cliff's edge without going through and knocking myself off. So again, I proceeded to do this with just one wolf, as I did not want to go through and risk the chance of being knocked off or having one of them fall off if there was too much crowding going on. I also did not want to get any form of engagements here, so I took out the scorpion quickly to avoid him knocking me off the edge. I still had the rest of the team stay back just to make sure we were going to go through and be safe. And then I did use the howl just for the buff because I was unsure of how many enemies were here, but I wanted to make sure I still had the buff while they were actually in radius. And then I did go through and notice that there was a megalania over here on the wall, and earlier I had actually gone through and spotted it with the spyglass, so I knew he was coming up here, and I did not want to risk the chance of him actually attacking me from the ceiling and putting me in a bad situation. And this guy was actually pretty strong. He was a level 135. And I looked prior to coming to this cave to see what it is it requires to actually tame them, and it needs the extraordinary kibble. And the reason for the taming is just for the simple fact that I do want to go through and tame all the creatures, and I know there are specific creatures that I will only be able to find and tame specifically in the caves. For example, the onyc and the megalania. So since I lack the extraordinary kibble, I was definitely going to have to come back to this cave or another cave in the near future to go through and be able to get this tame. But I did go through and at least grab his toxin off the ground after we had killed him, because we were going to go through and need that for the boss tributes. And again, because they are only found in the cave, I was going to go through and need to collect this as often as possible with every single one that I take out. I then went through and found myself at yet another gap, knowing I was going to have to go through and jump this to be able to go farther down and proceed into this cave. Fortunately, everything went as intended with all three of the wolves, so we were able to go through and continue our journey without any issues whatsoever. Now, at this point in time, we were actually going through and approaching the bottom of the cave, so I figured it was safe to go through and have my wolves follow me, as there should not be any way of them going through and actually falling down. And then one of my wolves just yeeted himself off the edge. Yeah, not quite sure what happened there. So I went through and I whistled aggressive, and I figured at this point in time, it's no longer slow and steady wins the race. We literally just have to go on a murder spree and hope that we can go through and survive this, because I'm not going to be able to go through and take them on a couple at a time. We literally have to take on the whole swarm all at once. Funny enough, Slushy was the only one that was actually imprinted, but because he was all by himself here, and I'm not actually sure if the aggressive call even hit him or if he was close enough to actually hear it because he had fallen down. I'm not quite sure what the distance or the radius for that was, because it could have been that maybe he was just still on passive and then he wasn't killing anything and that's why he died, but I'm not sure. But either way, we were able to go through and take these guys out and pick ourselves up a nice explorer note and go through and get a couple of different corpses. There was not too many issues down here, but yeah, our poor little buddy happened to eat himself the moment we got down here and ended his life. And there it was. The whole room was clear and the artifact was finally ours to claim. But then I got distracted as always, and I saw myself an explorer note, and I figured I might as well go through and pick it up since I already had the other one, and we would double up on the experience here. And sadly, Sunny was so leveled up that even with the two of them, he did not gain any levels. And then I, surprised, got attacked by a scorpion. And then there was one more buddy just chilling up on the wall here, posing a little bit more of a challenge. But Sunny learned to jump attack him, and we had no issues. And then the artifact was finally mine. And I had thought I had killed everything, but it appears as I was trying to grab the artifact, we were actually jump attacked by another megalania. And that could have been really bad had we not been on our mount, but our other wolf buddy managed to go through and spot him first, which meant we were safe, and we got ourselves some more megalania toxin, so I was pretty happy about that. And then as I was making my way back up, I actually spotted spotted that there was a red drop sitting right there at the very bottom, so I was pretty happy that we found that just as we were about to leave, so I figured we could go through and stop by and grab it and see what it was that this drop held, hoping for something good. And this was an insanely powerful RG saddle, which was pretty cool, and then there was a couple of other things in there as well, but the RG saddle really stood out. Now I was going to have to go through and craft this, and honestly I don't know if I really need too much more of a powerful RG saddle, as I'm not going to really be doing anything with them at this time outside of actually flying and bringing them together resources, but I figured it was still pretty cool, and my RG would definitely deserve it since he had put in plenty of work. Now, when it came to going through and ascending back up, I figured it'd probably be easier with just the one wolf, as trying to get them all down here was an absolute hassle. So I figured I would go through and just stick him away in the cryopod, and just me and Sunny would make the adventure back, as there should not be any creatures left here in this cave causing any form of problem. But the problem was that I get distracted easily, and I figured I'd do one last check for loot, and sure enough, there was actually an explorer up on a cliff that I'd completely missed. And thankfully, because I had the wolf, I was able to go through and find him. Now, this is the main reason I actually breeded up the wolves instead of the sabers, as I really like the ability that they can go through and see the creatures through walls and caves, as there tends to be a lot of creatures that do tend to mesh through the cave walls, and they can also find the explorer notes, and I do intend to go through and find absolutely as many as possible, if not necessarily for the experience, but more just to go through and collect them. And then I figured I would just go through and drop down and use the neat little trick where you can just hop off your mount at the last second to go through and save your health and their health. And now we were actually going to go through an exit. So I approached my first ledge and I readied up, and I was able to go through and make the jump successfully. And I was pretty happy, as these jumps tend to be quite difficult, and then jump number 2 was out of the way. But I figured I actually saw another route, a shortcut, so I figured I would go through and take this shortcut to go through and get back. And I made the third jump, and things were going swell. I was pretty happy with being able to go through and get out of here, and then there it was. The fateful moment where I missed my jump. I've actually gone through and killed a thyla in here because I've missed so many jumps in a time previously, and I've certainly got a lot better at it. But, cue the montage. I then came to the realization that this journey just might be easier on foot, so I went through and I put Sunny away, and I did come prepared. I actually brought a crossbow here with some grappling hooks, as I knew that this very much could have been a possibility, as I have just struggled with these jumps in the past with creatures, but when I'm on foot I tend to be able to make the jumps significantly easier. So I worked my way up one jump at a time and one after another, and there was absolutely no need for the crossbows. I was able to go through and make it all the way to the cave and not have any issues whatsoever. But there was one final challenge. Since I had decided to go through and put away both of my 2 remaining wolves in the cryopods, that meant that I was actually going to have to make the journey from the entrance of this cave back to the raft here on Carno Island without dying, in order to be able to go through and upkeep my artifact and not die, as I still had not died in this playthrough and my intention was to keep it this way. So I ran out of here charging, fearless, and not worrying about stopping or even being safe, as I knew that could cost me my life and potentially cause me to get overwhelmed and swarmed. So I just booked it straight for the raft, looking to go through and take out anything in my way, and thankfully, there was a Ceratosaurus nearby, but he had no interest in me, and we were home sweet home. Alright guys, well that makes our second artifact now. We are on our way to making further progress in this playthrough. If you did enjoy the video, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already.